This is a production of the AJ Podcast Network.
Here we go again, people. This is another show of the Passage Home podcast starring the Dr. Stanley Rushing. How you doing, Dr. Stanley Rushing, tonight?
I am, well, I'll put it like this. God is amazing, and by his grace, I am amazing, and I'm doing amazing this evening.
Amen, amen, amen. Definitely. So, how was the holidays? Did you get around family, and what did you do?
I stayed in the house. I made me a nice little vegetarian dinner, and I just enjoyed the peace. I found joy in being still.
Yeah.
Because when I'm still, I can hear more and do more than I can out chasing everything, and it was a blessing.
Definitely a blessing
to enjoy the time.
Definitely a blessing. Definitely peace, being still.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to be
How
still.
about yourself?
Man, I was pretty good, man. You know me, I was just around the main family, the wife, the kids, and, we were just eating, man, and just, enjoying each other and stuff like that, things of that nature. That's really what it's all about. I don't really get into the traditional holiday itself, but, I do take the advantage to eat good food and fellowship with the family, because that's really what it's about, fellowshipping with the family.
Yeah, you're right.
Definitely, man. So, I just really wanted to see how things were and check in with you and see what was going on. But what's on the agenda for the day?
Okay, today, leading from the last show,
Okay.
which was an amazing show.
Show.
Having a judge and a detective testify to the character that developed me into what we're going into today, that softened me up and set the pre-qualifier for what I stepped into.
Okay, now.
And the title for today's show is I woke up drunk in a math class. And let me break that down, because it's real deep. As you know, Judge Ricky Jones and I, we both got kicked out of the Catholic School League. He was going to De La Salle. I was going to Hales Franciscan, two premier pre-college schools. And in my sophomore year, I learned how to hustle, which was a benefit and a curse, because I learned from some very good hustlers of how to make things happen. And everything in Chicago at that time was a hustle. We, as freshmen, took advantage of the Spanish nuns who didn't speak much English. We put our age up on our ID. We took those IDs, got Social Security cards, took the Social Security cards, and when he got driver's license when we were just 14.
Wait, hold that thought for a second. You said you put your age up on the IDs. How did you put the age up on the IDs?
When we registered, they were doing the registration, so they didn't have anything to check it against, so we just put our age up to 16.
Oh, man, that's crazy. Yo, it's ironic you say that, because me and my best friend from kindergarten, we were just talking about the things we did when we was like 14 years old. And one of the things we did was we would take our IDs and alter them so we could be in the strip club that was down the street from my house at like 14, 15 years old. So I would scratch the 4 into a 1, and they would take it. Right. So me and this man was in the strip club at 14, 15 years old. We were just talking about it yesterday, but that's real funny, man. So continue on, man. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you just, we are so much alike, man. You my mentor for a reason.
And so we were rolling with cars. And so in my I got transferred again from the west side to the south side. And it's funny, you always hear from Michelle Obama to rappers, every Kanye West, they always say, I'm from the south side of Chicago, this and other. But from people from the west side like myself, that's just those are people who are a little bit more bougier than we are. Bragging about where they're from. And so the west side of Chicago is like the armpit of Chicago, and so when I went to school, I went to a middle class, black middle class school, and I didn't fit in well because every side of Chicago has a side and a rivalry, and so when I came there, I grew up, as you can tell from the other podcast, I wasn't a respecter of persons. So I didn't respect the fact that they were bushy. And so I didn't get along. I didn't fit in, but they weren't on my radar as to what I value, but they were on their radar because they thought they were valuable.
Right.
And that caused the friction. And so I wound up getting into an altercation there, to which the quarterback for the varsity was a sophomore, and so he was jealous of me because I pulled up in a 2-year car every day, and they couldn't figure out how I had a driver's license.
Right.
And so I was in the cafeteria, and he sat there. He would hold court at the table, and everybody would listen to him, and he'd brag about his accomplishments, his leather jacket. They were in the championship and stuff. So I didn't pay attention to him. I'm sitting there talking to the brother next to me, and Daryl Merchant, and he noticed that I'm not paying attention to him. He tries to get my attention because I'm not paying him any attention. And honestly, he wasn't even on my radar as interesting. Mm-hmm. And so he starts saying little things as I'm talking, trying to disrupt me. And so his little minions around here are laughing. And I honestly didn't even hear him because he didn't matter. Yeah. And so he continued on this quest to get my attention. So he called me a name. He said, "You ugly," and so I didn't miss a beat. I kept talking, and so he said, "You ain't just ugly, you oogly." And so everybody, you got to giggle all his friends. And so I'm still talking. I'm not paying any attention. So he gets up and he walks around the table, those long lunch tables, and I'm talking to Daryl, and I lean down to get some food, and he pushes my face in my food. Wow. And so that triggered, all the way back, I had a trigger that made me stand up to the gangs when they came to kill me and everything. That triggered that it was almost like Enter the Dragon. It was like a dragon came said, "Excuse me, can I use your body for a minute? I got to do something here in the earth realm." And so I jumped up and I hit him in the face 5 times before he could raise his hands, and because he had 5 different cuts on his face. Mm-hmm. And then I proceeded to drag him across the table and threw him on the floor. And so then I was in a Jesuit school, mm-hmm. where they didn't have priests, they had brothers. And Brother Andrew came over, and these are the guys that had the brown robes on and the rope around their waist and the hood and stuff. Yeah. And so he came over, and I was cussing like a sailor and trying to get at him. He picked me up off the floor. But it was like deja vu, because I did the same thing in grammar school. I skipped over that because I broke the teacher's nose in front of the class in grammar school because he slapped me in my face. Yeah. And triggered me.
So people just can't put their hands on you. They touch you, it was on and popping.
Well, it's like this. The reason why it was such a big deal for that late teacher to do that, I got whoopings at home, you know, and I'm in school, and it's 1969. You don't want no white guy slapping you in the face in front of the whole class
Yeah.
when you try to get your social recognition on, your social skills on as an eighth grader. You know, you don't want to be remembered for that, but that he triggered something, and I went off. And so this guy Clifford, he triggered something. So now the guy's got me up in the air. He's holding me, and so I did what they call a jack move. And a jack move is when you convince the person that's holding you that you're okay, just so they'll turn you loose. And so Clifford was on the floor, and when the teacher, when the brother turned me loose, because he's a white guy, and white guys figure they got control and stuff. So I let him think he had, so I stopped cussing. I let my body go limp. And so he let me go. And when my feet hit the ground, I took off running, and I ran over and kicked him in his nose. And so before he can get up, that incident banned me from being able to come back the next year, because I didn't pass anything that year except gym and religion.
Wow.
And those are the classes they give you and stuff. I spent most of my time, because I had a car at the all-girl Catholic school, and I was dating senior cheerleaders at the time, and that made everybody jealous. And then my girlfriend was a gangster, and she dated guys who are in Wikipedia right now, who were gang leaders. And so there was a thing in Chicago about stepping. There were only certain steps in the dance that was deemed for gang leaders, and there were only special people that could do the steps with them. When she would come and we'd have a dance, we had a dancing skill that made them even more jealous. And because they were bougie, they weren't into that level of culture, and so all those things worked against me. And then when my mother came to register me for the next year, they said no, he cannot come back here, because when I broke Clifford's nose, he wasn't able to play in the championship that they were in, and they lost the championship.
Wow.
But I didn't care. I wouldn't bother him. And he barked up the wrong tree. And so she thought that because she was late on tuition was the reason. And so she told me, said, excuse me, she said, I can make the payments a little bit earlier and on time. And they said, no, you don't understand. We don't want your money. He cannot come back here and stuff. And so I wound up going to a continuation school, and I met back up with Ricky. In that school, they had a grading system for a second chance. Mm-hmm. They had an A, they had a B, they had a C, then they had a D, and between D and F, they had an E. And I was getting all D's, E's, and F's.
Wow.
Because I really wasn't concerned about school. Because in that school were all the rejects from all the high schools in Chicago. It was a circus. There was one guy in a 2-year school had been there 4 years in a 2-year school, and his name, they called him Celebrate, because all he did was party. And so I was going nowhere fast, and to describe the surroundings, I had never contemplated going to college, but that's when my life changed while I was drunk in a math class. And that's why I woke up at. I wasn't high. There's a difference between being high and being drunk. I'll never forget that day we drank some Boone's Farm, some 100 proof Calvins, some 80 proof Granddad, and some Ripple, which is will fuck you up by itself.
Wow.
and so I was sitting in the class, I was dozing off, barely conscious. The only thing was on my mind was lunchtime, and that I would go down to the cafeteria to get some of those greasy French fries they had to coat my stomach so I wouldn't throw up. And the teacher walked in the room. It wasn't just our teacher, Mr. Latham wasn't there. We had a substitute, and the substitute was the assistant principal, T. Muskie. And when he walked in, he was a little short guy, a South African, had a big gap between his teeth, like a lot of the African tribes have over there.
Yeah.
And so we sat back and we talking stuff, we sassing him in the whole 9 yards. And he comes in, he looks at us, and he walks to the front of the class, and he made an announcement. He said, "You guys, he said, I'm not going to teach you math today." He said, because you don't have enough brain cells amongst you assembled for me to teach any math, so I'm not going to waste my time. He said, but what I am going to do, I'm going to teach you something about your history. He said, but, and we said, go ahead. Do something, dance, do something, quit wasting time. And so we're talking to the principal like this. So he said, he starts walking to the board, and he stops, and he turns around. He said, but do me a favor. He said, put your boots on, because I'm going to walk you through the sewer. I'm going to walk you through the real shit. And so we broke out because he was cussing in class. Said, "Walk us through the shit. Walk us through it. Do something, motherfucker. Do something." And so he went to the board and he drew a picture of the continent of the United States. Then he drew a picture. So we looking. He drew a picture of the continent of Africa. And then he turned around. And he came back and he looked at us and he asked a question. He said, how many people want to go to Africa? And this is 1971. And we broke out, the whole class broke out in laughter. And we laughed. We didn't stop laughing for at least 4 minutes.
What was so funny?
5 minutes.
What was so funny? Why was it so funny?
It's 1971. He asked us if we wanted to go to Africa. And we thought it was hilarious. And these are the answers we gave. And when we stopped laughing, we sort of got angry that he even asked that. And so we said, are you kidding? The fuck we want to go to Africa for? Africans don't even like us. Whenever we say Africa, they got their nose turned up and shit. Fuck we want to go there for? And stuff. And so he sat there, fielded all the statements and everything. So he didn't say anything. He walked back to the board. And when he went to the board, he circled Texas. And then he circled South Africa. He circled California, and then he circled South Africa, and he turned around, and we trying to figure out what this means. He came back. He said, "Do you know that during the gold rush, it took them 13 years to get the gold, the majority of the gold out of California?" He said that's why they call it the rush. And he said that in South Africa, they've been mining gold. He said, and I'm not talking about the diamond, just gold. They've been mining gold in South Africa for 350 years, and they haven't scratched the surface yet of what's in the ground. And so then he goes back and he circled Texas, and then he circled Libya. And he said that, do you know that it's cheaper to drill and pump oil and ship it 8,000 miles than it is to get from Texas to your gas pump. And at the time in 1971, they had embargo on. No. They had gas lines, and because of the wildcat strikes in Texas, and they started importing oil in 1971 for $5 a barrel, shipped 8,000 miles. Wow. And so then he goes back and he takes the talk and he draws a line from Libya all the way down to South Africa. He said, you know what? He said there are people over there. He didn't say people. He said the white man is over there. You cannot get him out of your homeland. And he's raping this continent from the top to the bottom using the same math that you too drunk to get today.
Wow.
And so when he said that, I sat up in my chair a little bit, and the laughing stopped. And he said that then he circled Togo. He didn't circle Ghana. He circled Togo. He said in 1966 they got their independence. When the French left this country, they had taken over 250 metric tons of gold out of this one narrow little country. And so he looked out at us, he said, you niggas out there snatching gold chains off of each other's throat while the white man is snatching metric tons out of your land and stuff. And you don't even want to go and stuff. And so then he started breaking down different countries. He said there right now, the African continent has $88 trillion in natural resources. They don't have to send out to anybody for the next 100 years for anything. And it belongs to you. And you're over here, going to jail for snatching a gold chain.
Wow.
And stuff. Well, and you're drunk in a math class. He said, do you know that it takes calculus to be able to drill a hole in the ground, calculate how much air you're going to need, figure out how to keep it from caving in on you while you take out a natural resource every day and go hundreds of feet underground and thousands of feet underground every day, and he said, right now you too drunk to even learn how to do that, and so a little bit more of my high dissipated. I wasn't drunk anymore. I was just high, but I was paying attention. Mm-hmm. And so that's when he lit into us. He said the reason why Africans, he said right now in Ethiopia, they have one university. 250,000 Ethiopians apply to get into that one university every year. That wow. The university only holds 50,000 people. People literally walk thousands of miles with no shoes on just to be able to apply, to be able to wear some shoes if they got in. They don't wear the shoes walking the thousands of miles to apply. And they say in that college, he said people that are in there are hanging on by a grade point average. They can't afford to fail. And as say, there are people there in Ethiopia who literally commit suicide rather than go back to their village without an education. And so he said the lucky ones get picked up by charity organizations, get out, come over here to be able to see their African brothers who are in this land of milk and honey. And they look at you and see that a nigger can roll over out of bed into a college for free and won't go. That's the look that you see when they look disgusted at you. And it's not because they don't like you. It's just that, you know, in Africa they don't have welfare and stuff. And so they don't have anything to give you if you haven't done anything. He said, look at the big picture. He said, here you are, you sitting here with all this land and no, you sitting here with all this technology, and they were begging blacks to come to college, doing affirmative action and things back there. They not only wanted you to come to college, they had to give away a certain amount of degrees a year in order to keep their federal money. And so they were begging us to come to college. And he said that, you know, and we wouldn't go. And so he said they were pissed off because we were avoiding an opportunity. That when we went to college, we didn't focus on anything that would help Africa. We said there were more black people in the cafeteria, in the hallways, than were in the engineering classes.
Wow.
You know,
where is that disconnect? Where is that disconnect? What happened mentally along the line to make us, because there's a saying, you want to hide something from us, they say just put it in the book, right? We've been saying that. That saying been, when I was a little kid, that saying been forever. You want to hide something from us, just put it in the book. Where was that disconnect?
Right.
What happened?
What is disconnect is that we went through hundreds of years of not having anything. And in the hood, a lot of people with this glass and say, I'm in college, I'm in junior college, and that was it. They didn't have any aim, any goal. But what he did, when you hear this story, what he did was he gave me a purpose and a target to reach for and showed me, because what I missed out on is when I was saying, he said, here you are over here with all this technology and no land, and the African is over there with all that land and no technology, and you sitting over here, you ain't doing your part. He said, you missing it. There's some place for you to take this. And then he did a little sidebar. He gave us an example. He said, when I'm from South Africa, when I left there, I can't go back. There was apartheid then. He said, white folks didn't like me when I left. They didn't like me when I got here, but it didn't stop me from getting a civil engineering degree. It didn't stop me from getting a pilot's license. It didn't stop me from learning how to build roads. He said, do you know what that means right now? He said, I can build a city. I can fly over it, and I can build a road through it. And I got that all while white folks didn't like me. That's what woke me up. That's what took all the excuses from me from going to school. Because we were under the illusion that that they didn't want us to have it, and so we settled for that. But they weren't doing anything to stop us from getting it. And so from that moment, I learned, don't ever let the fact that somebody don't want you to have something stop you from getting everything that you want to get. Wow. So he did, like I say, he told us, he said, when you go to college, you're trying to take everything to stay. He kept harping on that math. He said, you're trying to take everything to stay within the math. He said, don't you know that math is nothing but thought put into numbers? And when you say that you're afraid of math, you're afraid to think. Wow. And that opens all kind of doors. So at that point, my high was even gone, and I was sitting in my chair, and my brain was smoking. And so then, but he wasn't finished yet. He told us that, when you go to college, you're trying to take psychology, sociology, phys ed, everything to stay away from math. He's, so he showed us. Then he pulled out $100 bill and he set it on a desk in front of us. We all looking at the $100 bill. He said, "I will give this $100 bill to anybody who can tell me where there's one mining university in the United States." And we sat there, and it really embarrassed me, but it embarrassed me into doing better because I couldn't name one. I couldn't. And then so he started rattling them off and stuff. And it was simple because he named Virginia Tech.
Wow.
Which they got coal mines in Virginia. But I could have named any college because if you take civil engineering has a division that deals with mining.
Wow.
But I was that ignorant about college, but it sparked my curiosity.
Wow.
So that when I graduated that year, I never got anything less. I never got high in school ever again. One.
Wow.
I never got nothing less than a B in any class that I took after that. And I was going nowhere because with the grading system, my mother was paying $240 per credit hour. And
Wow.
one class was just like 3 credit hours. So I was wasting her money. And so I went out and got a job. I paid for my own education, and I finished a year. I was in college at 15 and a half.
Wow.
And I was so young when I was in college that I had art class. And I was sitting in art class, and we had a new model up there, and so I was sitting there, I was blushing to myself. I said, "Don't they know I'm just a minor?"
Wow.
But I went into engineering. First I went into electronic engineering. Then I switched from that to engineering. I switched from that to architectural engineering. I took every math class that I could take. I had a 24-hour schedule to where the dean had to call me in and say, ask me, was I sane or insane?
Wow.
And I got my pilot's license that year, but it put me on a path.
Wow. Well, guess what? That path.
To get education.
Well, hold that thought, Dr. Stanley, because speaking of engineer, the engineer has the time is. This was awesome.
Yeah.
So we want to hold that thought because the takeaway that I got from this, while people are partying and playing, there are people that's preparing. And while you were partying and you were playing, you should have been preparing. And that teacher, had it not been for that teacher to wake you up, to get you prepared for what's to come, and to get you prepared for the challenge and what it is in this world, because nobody's going to give you anything. So we have to be prepared before we can party and we can play. That's the takeaway that I get from this podcast tonight, Dr. Stanley. And that was a very big, powerful story. That really was.
Right.
So definitely as we...
I want to lead back to the beginning. I woke up drunk in a math class, and technically, I didn't wake up from just wake up from drunk and super, but I woke up, period.
Woke up
while drunk in a math class.
Awesome.
And as I said before, I found out today it's easier to teach a child than to change an adult, and that's why I went into teaching for 40 years while I did everything else. I thank you, AJ, and I thank you, Terrence, for allowing me to share my story.
Dr. Stanley, it's always a pleasure having you. I can't wait till the next show. Where we're gonna go, I don't know, but we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna get on this passage home. We're gonna wake our people up, the ones that are drunk, the one that are high, and the one that are partying and not preparing for what's to come. That is the mission. That is the objective. And we are going to do our part to do that with this Passage Home podcast as we listen to Dr. Stanley and myself. And this is it, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all have a great night.
Hey, give thanks.
Give thanks always.
Uh-huh.